Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for September 15th through 21st. This week I read one book, I watched 3 shows, I watched 1 movie, and I listened to 2 books. What is my voice doing? Let's try that again in case it'll be less annoying, but I highly doubt it. Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for September 15th through 21st. This week I read 1 book, I watched 3 shows, I watched 1 movie, and I listened to 2 books. Marginally better. I don't know what my voice is doing, but we're gonna roll with it. I've probably mentioned this many times before, but I film these first thing in the morning, so these are really the first words I've said today, and yeah, it's just what my voice decided to be like. The book I read this week is Death at Morning House. This book has a dual timeline, and in the present we're following Marlowe, who has a crush on this girl and has had a crush on this girl for a very, very long time, and then finally gets a summer job where she actually gets to work with her and get to know her a little bit better, and things seem to be going well, but then she ends up having to take a completely different summer job. In the other timeline we're following the Ralstons, and this is a family that is rich enough that they actually own their own island and this $4 million mansion on it back in 1932. So that's $4 million in like 1930s money, which is a lot of money. This is one of the many islands in the Thousand Island region, which yes, is the region where that salad dressing came from. That was something I didn't realize beforehand. I just thought it was a weird thing to call a salad dressing. But yes, it is a region that has actually 1,800 islands in it. Some of them only big enough to put like literally one house. That's just all that will fit on them, and some of them a little bit bigger than that. The reason why these 2 timelines are connected is Marlowe actually ends up going and working as a tour guide on Ralston Island, because since 1932 the island has sort of been shut down. There were 2 family tragedies on the same day, and the family just basically abandoned the house, abandoned the island, and never went back. And now a new developer has actually bought the island and is going to be doing different things with it, but the locals petitioned to have a summer where everybody could come and learn the history of the island and look around at things. And due to one of their tour guides being down, she actually ends up getting this job, goes there, and realizes there's a mystery as to why they were down a tour guide, as well as realizing there's a mystery as to why 2 of the Ralston children happened to die on the same day back in 1932. I really like books like this where we have not only a dual timeline, but dual mysteries that you're trying to figure out what's happening in either timeline. And this one was full of a lot of feelings where you're just like, oh, I really feel for this character. I really get that they're going through some stuff. I also just really liked Marlowe. I liked being inside her head. She was a character that I would love to see more of. On to the shows I watched more than voice. Why are you doing this? I hate it. On to the shows I watched more Criminal Minds, as you might have been able to guess if you've watched the last, I don't know, 13 of these videos. I started in season 13 on episode 4 and I ended in season 14 on episode 7. Keeping up with my usual, just watching a little bit over a season every week. What's really interesting about this era of the show is there's so much to draw from literally over a decade ago, that sometimes characters come back. I know I talked about this last time because that was truly an epic thing that happened, but that also happened this time. Characters that were very, very much side characters actually came back. And also, as soon as I saw Michael Hogan, I was like, it's in the frackin' ship, because I love him on Battlestar Galactica. I love him a little bit less in this, not his performance, but the character himself. We're also starting to get more backstories from different characters and fleshing out the backstories of characters that have been there for a long time. And overall, as the show points out, this show is not just about catching bad guys, it's really about family, and that's why people like me keep watching shows like this. We also watched the first 2 episodes of the 2nd season of The Handmaid's Tale, and I don't know where it's going to go from here. Like, I read the book, I remember certain things, but I don't know if this happened in the book. Honestly, couldn't tell you. I'm pretty sure it didn't. That being said, I'm not mad about it. Clearly Atwood had some decision in the show itself, and even if she didn't, a show is completely different than a book, so I get them taking liberties. For example, Game of Thrones, like, George was too busy to even finish those books, so the show surpassed them, which I'm still mad about because I've been waiting for the 6th book of that series since whenever it was announced that it was coming out like a decade ago. Needless to say, I'm just interested to see where it goes from here, because I remember a lot of the little details that were in the 1st season, and it was interesting to see those brought to light. Now I don't think I have any memories to pull from when it comes to what's going to go next. We also watched a single episode of Doctor Who. It was the 4th season, it was the 3rd episode, and it was the Planet of the Ood. And I'm so glad that I'm not the only person on the internet that thinks that Tim McInnery looks a lot like Mark Gatiss. Because when I saw the preview for this episode on the end of the previous episode, which I hate that they do that, by the way, I went, is he in another episode as a different character? Because that would not be the first and only time that Doctor Who did that. But no, he's a completely different character, and apparently he was also on an episode of Sherlock, but it's been so long since I watched that I don't have an immediate memory of that happening. But I imagine he was there for one of two reasons. He either looks a lot like Mycroft, which he does, or there's 12 actors in Britain. As for the movie I watched this week, that was Atlas. This is a new release. It stars Jennifer Lopez, and it has a lot to do with AI, which when I heard that, I was like, well, that's really relevant to our today. Great. And the most terrifying thing about this movie is by the end of it, I really enjoyed the AI friend. Which, AI scares the crap out of me. Not only do I get ads for AI things every second ad, actually probably more often than that, because I'm only really thinking of the Grammarly ads that I get relentlessly, because YouTube seems to think I really need that service. But then I also get all these weird ads where you know that like it's somebody else's voice and not the person actually speaking, and it's definitely been created by AI as ads, and you're just like, what is this? I don't like it. If I could trust humans to use AI technology responsibly and in a way that would never hurt anybody, I'd be all for it, but I don't think I can trust humans to do that. In any case, this one is set in the near future after AI has become a thing, and Atlas is a woman who has a little bit of a backstory to do with who created AI because, well, it was her mom. The sun is coming up, and I'm sure the lighting has changed quite dramatically, so give me a second to fix that. Honestly, hope I didn't just make it worse. In any case, there's an AI big bad that left the planet like 27 years ago, and they found him and they're going to track him down, and she's like, I have to be on that mission because you guys want to like track him and study him, and that's just a bad plan. We need to get rid of him altogether. So even though it's not actually her expertise, she ends up going on this mission, and it goes from there. It's a fun time. I enjoyed it, but yeah, I'm horrified that I ended up liking the AI kind of companion she had at the end, because I am actually scared about AI, but then I really liked that robot, so what can I do? As for the audiobooks I listened to this week, the first one is Fire Exit. This one is all about a character named Charles, and he's kind of at the midpoint of his life, and he's kind of looking back at all of these things that have happened to him and all the things that are happening to him currently, and trying to decide whether or not he should reveal this really big secret he's been keeping for a very long time, which is that little girl that lives across the river that he can see from his house. That is his daughter. However, when her mother found out she was pregnant, she decided to marry somebody else from the same native tribe so that her daughter would also benefit from being native. Charles actually grew up on the reservation. His stepfather was from this nation, but when he turned 18, he was no longer allowed to live there anymore. His mother could still live there because she was still married to him, but at 18 he had to go. Those were just the rules. He actually had a really wonderful relationship with his stepfather. It's the only father he ever really knew, so he was at this weird place where technically he wasn't from that nation, but really he grew up in that nation. And he's still in love with the woman who ended up having his daughter, who he's only really met in person one time when she was very, very young. Now, his stepfather passed on many years ago. He's dealing with his mother, who has some form of dementia. He has a drinking problem, but he's currently sober. So this book is just a collection of him going over his entire life, what's happening with people in his life, and trying to figure out how he can tell this girl that, hey, by the way, I'm actually your dad. This is one of those books that's just fascinating, and you're just enjoying being along for this ride, because if you're anything like me, this is not a life you've lived, and I'm fascinated by lives that are not exactly my own. Unless I missed a really critical line, I don't think this was the best title for this book. I can see where you got the title for this book, sort of, but it wasn't the best. But like I said, there was probably a critical line I missed at some point. Speaking of books whose titles come up as a line in the book, the other audiobook that I listened to this week is The Color Purple. This one definitely talked about The Color Purple a couple of times. I didn't know much about this book going into it besides it's an American classic and it's something that everyone should read. And I happened to notice either on Goodreads or on Storygraph, I can't remember which one, that it's labeled as queer. So I was like, well, perfect. I can read this for the book that has an adaptation prompt for Read Queer All Year. Because I'm pretty sure this has a classic movie, but it's also been adapted on Broadway, and I think that Broadway musical is also being adapted into a movie this year. And now that I have all of that backstory, I would really love to see that. This is a hard book. We start out with our main character Celie when she's about 12, and we start out with her basically writing these letters to God in her head, and the first one has to do with her father doing things to her that should never be done to a child, especially a child that is your child, because his wife is too poorly to do those sort of wifely duties. I'm saying it this way because YouTube doesn't like it when I use certain words, and I'm trying to play ball, but like, I wish I could just say the words. We're all adults here. From there, she continues to have a pretty hard life, because after that, she is basically told to marry this guy so that she can be a wife to him and bring up his children. And oh yeah, she had a couple of children with her father, but she's pretty sure that he just killed them, until one day when she sees this little girl that looks exactly like her in town, she's like, that's probably my kid. I don't want to give away too much more of the plot, but this is a very powerful book. My impulse is to say I really enjoyed seeing what Celie's life was like, but it's hard to use a word like enjoy, because a lot of what was going on in her life wasn't enjoyable for her, so why would it be enjoyable to me as a reader? However, there is a lot of humanity in this book. There is a lot of moments where these characters are learning and growing and becoming more themselves, and you get to see her find a love, even though she's told all her life that she's fat, she's ugly, she's not that smart, all of these things that are just so prevalent. And I hate that people weaponize things like that, and it's a thing that happens all the time, and I hate it. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of violence to this book, but if that's something that you can handle, I definitely recommend this one. Also, this version of the audiobook was read by the author, which was just something very special. I really love when that's a thing that can happen. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!